Hi, my name's Hugh Stewart. I'm the CEO of Montage Gold Corp. And following the release today of what I believe is a very positive preliminary economic assessment on our Koné gold project in Côte d'Ivoire, I'd like to give you a bit of a talk through of the presentation, go through a little bit of background on the company, talk about the PEA, and then give some sort of description of where we think the project is going in the future. On slide 3, you'll see really a summary of where the PEA is, what the PEA is looking like. So very positive financial metrics, an NPV of just over 650 million at a $1,600 gold price. Life of mine production around about 3 million ounces. We do think we can increase that a bit as the drilling continues. And I think the key here is that the project is very simple. The ore body is very simple. It's very wide. The strip ratio is very low. It's a long life asset with production over close to 15 years and produces in excess of 200,000 ounces a year over that period. Peak production, as it says there, of just over 300,000 ounces in years 2 and 3, and averaging close to 250,000 ounces over the first 9 years of the mine life. So a large scale project, good cost structure with low all-in sustaining costs, particularly in the first 3 years, which are obviously critical for payback. And still a lot more news to come. We, having completed the PEA, we are already probably 80% into the infill drilling program, which will then feed into the indicated resource in Q3. And the aim is to complete a full feasibility study on this project by the end of this year. A lot of exploration upside still to be realized, and I think that's perhaps the sort of second part of the business plan, is to not just have the Koné deposit as a very strong project to start with, but I believe that as we increase exploration around and as it becomes the center of gravity in the district, we can add further resources to this and make it even better. The slide just showing the share price performance. Montage was actually created in August 2019 after spinning out some assets from Orca Gold, which prime asset is the Block 14 deposit in Sudan. We created Montage by merging it with some assets and some cash from another private explorer called Avant Minerals. We worked during the course of the end of 2019 and 2020 on doing some basic work on the Koné project to try and demonstrate that it was going to be what we thought it was going to be. We got to sort of August time last year. On the back of that drilling that we were doing last year and some of the other studies we've been doing in the background, we realized that we got to that point. So we listed the company on the TSX in October 2020, raised just around $35 million, and obviously have been pushing the project much harder since that point to take it to the finalization of the PEA in the last few days. The share price took a bit of a hit going into the new year, but as you can see there, over the last few months, I think the momentum is starting to build. We've been putting out some good drill results, mostly from infill, but you can see the share price is starting to recognize that. And obviously we see the release of the PEA study as being the springboard for further success and for further appreciation in the share price. In terms of slide 5, but just around 100 million shares outstanding, but I think the key thing here is to look at the lower right-hand part of that slide and look at the shareholders behind Montage. Obviously Orca Gold, which is strongly supported by the Lundin family as well, and Ross Beatty, and Sandstorm Gold Royalties, who came in through the merger with Avant Minerals. So a very serious, very well-known set of backers with a lot of experience in financing projects, especially large-scale projects throughout the world. And I think that's one of the key things that differentiates us from many of our peers, in that we have that backing with the experience to take these projects through to production. A small leadership group, myself, Adam Spencer and Glenn Kondo, but also a very experienced group and a very experienced group of directors. Not just people like Rick Clark, who was the CEO of Redback Mining back in the day. Kevin was the COO of Redback Mining back in the day, as I was VP Exploration. But also people like Peter Mitchell coming in as independents, again, give us a lot of strength in terms of the board and a lot of experience in terms of raising money and moving projects forward. Since the IPO, I think the key thing for us is to keep doing what we told people we were going to do during the presentations and the marketing for the IPO. And I think so far we've done that. We've doubled the resource at Koné since with the drilling back in, which was completed in December. We've delivered all the technical aspects of the study, probably to a level slightly higher than a PEA in terms of metallurgy, geotech, hydrological work. And I think the PEA, which has just been delivered, works very well, shows an extremely strong project. Still a bunch more to do. As I said, we're 80% complete with the 55,000 meter infill drilling program. We will have that resource out by probably the end of July this year. We use, as I'll talk about in a minute, some very conservative approaches to how we deal with things like mineral resource estimates and things like that. And as a result of that, we would expect a very high degree of conversion from inferred resources to indicated resources. And obviously, we're going to try and grow that resource. The drilling is part of the reason for increasing the size of the drill program from 35 to 55,000 meters recently, was to be able to allow us to go after some extensions, both at depth and around the edges of the deposit. We've been very focused at Koné on developing this project to the study, developing and hitting these targets in terms of resource growth. So now is also the time where we can actually start getting a little bit off resource and start drilling some extra, more geological targets to try and increase the pace of that resource growth. And as I said, feasibility study is on track for the end of this year. We've just shipped about 130 more metallurgical samples. We've got some more geotech going on. We're drilling currently in the tailings and the water storage areas for geotech for Knight Piésold. And importantly here, we are fully funded through the feasibility study towards the end of the year and probably into permitting probably in the end of this year and going into 2022. We would expect to come out of this year with probably between $9 and $10 million in the bank, having completed all of this work. A little bit more detail on the PEA. As I said, a lot of aspects of this study have been completed to a higher level of detail than a PEA. And most of the metrics there you can see life of mine gold production in excess, just in excess of 3 million ounces. But a significant project, large-scale gold production, 200,000 ounces over the life of mine. Very low strip ratio. I think that's an important point here, as you'll see in a couple of the following slides. It is a very distinct ore body. It's not like a lot of the ore bodies you'll see in this part of the world. And an annual mining rate of 35 million tons a year, again, as you'll see in a minute. Being able to mine at a higher rate early in the mine life, to be able to accelerate the delivery of grade into the plant in the early mining years is an important part of this study, makes an important contribution to the economics of the project. Cash costs are good. Life of mine 975. I'd hope as exploration continues, you could probably pull that down a little bit. Capital costs of $489 million were largely through the size of the plant, which is running at 11 million tons per annum. We have put things like the power, the camp, and some other aspects of the project into boot contracts to reduce the size of the capital, and that has made an impact. Solid NPVs at $1,600 gold price, and obviously if you take that up to spot, it gets a lot better. Again, good IRR, good payback. So this is starting to look like a very solid project on the back of the scale of the project, on the back of that 11 million ton plant, the nature of the mineralization, and be able to mine this with economies of scale and process it with economies of scale. A little bit more detail here on the processing and production schedule for Koné. I think the key here is on the right-hand graph. The plan is to mine for a period of 9 years at a rate of approximately 35 million tons per annum. And on that basis, we're able to stockpile lower grade material and maintain a higher grade going through the process plant, particularly in those first years and particularly the first 3 years when we get the production to in excess of 300,000 ounces a year. And obviously that makes a key impact on the economics of the project and keeps that payback well under 3 years. Some detail on the capital and operating costs. Obviously it's a large process plant, 11 million tons per annum, which takes up a big chunk of the cash. The tailings processing in excess of 160 million tons will be a fairly large facility that will be stage through into sustaining capital, which helps. The mining component there is not necessarily pre-strip, but really is just mining ahead of the commissioning of the process plant to be able to make sure that there's adequate material on the ROM pad ready to go when the process plant needs it. I think the key thing in terms of operating costs are two things. Firstly is the low power requirements. One of the reasons why the study is a little bit late, we originally planned it for April, is we've been looking very hard and designing the comminution circuit. Originally we were going for a simple single-stage crusher, SAG and ball mill. Now we're going for a two-stage crushing process with smaller SAG and ball mills, which allows us to reduce the power draw. And obviously with the low bond index, low sort of energy required for the ball milling, and that helps, plus with the scale, helps us keep the processing cost low. The other cost assumptions that have gone into the study, I think in general we've used pretty conservative numbers. The mining cost has been derived from first principles, from experience, and I think we do have the ability, once we get into the next phase, the feasibility study, and get some contractors out there to bring in bids, that we can probably do a little bit better than that. So all in all, life of mine, all-in sustaining cost $975, but critically, again, in the first 3 years, aiding payback is that low cost of about $835 an ounce. So the next few slides really talk to why we think Koné can work, why we think Koné is so good. And obviously the basis for everything in the mining business is the geology. And Koné is not your normal or typical West African shear zone hosted gold deposit. Most of those will probably have a true width of perhaps 20, 30, sometimes up to 50 meters. Koné has a true width probably averaging in excess of 200 meters through most of its length, especially in the southern part of the ore body. Those true widths can get up to probably in the range of 330 meters, which, to start with, gives us a very low strip ratio. But it also means that it's a very simple ore body to mine. We can use large equipment. The mining floor will be in excess of 250 meters wide. Now, it's not really going to change. It's not complicated. We're not going to bring in extra dilution. We're not going to lose little bits of the ore body. It's a very simple thing to mine. And obviously, we can take advantage of economies of scale on that basis. As you can see from the section there, the pits go very close to the bottom of the resource. The current in-pit resource takes over 90% of the inferred resource as announced. You can see the inferred resource pit in blue there. And those pits do have the potential to go a bit deeper, and you can see some planned holes in blue there that we're in the process of drilling as I speak. All this, the drilling, as I said, the 55,000 meter program is expected to be done in early July, and we would expect to be putting out that indicated resource estimate towards the end of July. I think an important part of what we do and how we've always done things in terms of the group that I've been working with is the conservative nature of how we approach the exploration process. It is slightly cheesy to have a tagline of discover to build, but really that is what we're here to do. So when you look at the parameters that we've put into this study, I think you'll see conservatism at a number of points. Firstly, in terms of the resource, now, as I just said, over 90% of that resource is coming into the pit. We've known what that pit is going to be for quite some time, and all our work in terms of the drilling has been aimed at generating that conversion from inferred resource to in-pit resources. Those pits, in terms of the PEA, which has been a design pit, have been run at $1,250, which is pretty conservative given the pricing that a lot of companies are using these days. And again, with our resources, we've reported the resources at $1,500, which again is a little bit lower than a lot of companies are using these days. We have reduced the cutoff grade. There is a requirement under 43101 to state a base case, and we've brought that down this time to 0.2, a cutoff of 0.2, to really reflect the type of cutoff that we're seeing going into the PEA and the design pits that have formed the basis for the PEA. So all in all, a very conservative approach to the modelling. We use an MIK modelling approach generated by a consultancy out of Perth that I've worked with for close to 15 years now. They've done all the modelling for Redback and for Orca. So very used to using these type of models. And again, the conservatism that they employ is key to how we work. Over the last couple of slides, just talked about some of the sort of key aspects or the key features of Koné. But some of those economic drivers are quite significant in terms of things like the strip ratio, probably one of the lowest strip ratios currently being contemplated in West Africa, and the rock hardness. The BWI is a measure of the energy required by the ball mills to take a rock down to the size, in this case 75 microns, required to extract the gold. And because the mineralization at Koné, the alteration that goes along with it is based on biotite and not silica, we have one of, if not the softest rocks in West Africa from a ball milling perspective. So again, pretty simple, low hardness, low strip ratio. The metallurgy, it's a very standard plant. There's nothing fancy about it. It's simply crush, grind, and then extract the ore using cyanide. Those aspects such as low strip ratio, fresh rock hardness, obviously combine to reduce process cost, and combined with the size of the plant, give us those economies of scale that I've talked about over the last few slides. We are doing a lot more metallurgical test work. I think one of the key things is when you're working at relatively low grades is that you need to make sure that you hit every aspect of the study, that you understand exactly, you don't leave any room for error. So we've just in the process of shipping about another 130 plus samples to SGS Lakefield in Canada for another round of variability testing, both in terms of leach extraction, but also in terms of rock hardness. So we understand the comminution characteristics throughout the length and breadth of the ore body. Again, location and site layout. We are sitting right on a asphalted road, which connects to the capital of Abidjan and the port. We are in an area of very little habitation, you can see on the slide. Most of the people live in the villages of Botogo and Fadidougou, and to the west and east of the project, respectively. We've good relationships with these people. We've been working in this area for quite a long time now. Although Montage is a relatively new company, I've actually been working in this area since 2008. That the projects were actually discovered during our time at Redback, but it's taken us a fair amount of time to get them to this stage, obviously. Good access, so good local relationships, very little resettlement. As you can see, there's no habitation really within that project footprint. We are in the process of discussing with the Ivorian government getting access to the Tundia Forest Reserve, and I think we have agreement in principle for how that's going to work, so I don't really see too many issues there. Okay, so on to power. Clearly one of the fundamentals of any gold project is how you're going to power the plant. And I think I've been surprised over the last few weeks as we've gone into this in terms of how much LNG, liquefied natural gas, is being used in the mining industry, not just in West Africa, but throughout the world. There are now, I think, 6 mines in Ghana running gas turbine plants using the natural gas discoveries off the coast of Ghana. But there are also natural gas discoveries off the coast of Côte d'Ivoire. And obviously the use of, in this case, a hybrid LNG and solar plant bring a lot of positives to the project. There'll be a 7 megawatt solar component to this. So not only it is very green, it's going to save a huge amount of emissions over running HFO, but it also is very economic. And it's also going to be on site and therefore a lot more controllable and a lot more reliable than other sources of power. In this case, we've used a boot contract, build, own, operate and transfer, to reduce the upfront capital. But the bottom line power cost, including transport of the LNG, at least to start with from Prestea in Ghana, will be about just under 8 cents a kilowatt hour. So a very competitive cost. So throw that back into the economies of scale, the relatively low rock hardness. Again, it means we can keep those processing costs, those operating costs at the lower end of the quartile to be able to take advantage of these things. So where does that leave us? I think, based on a study there, looking at some of our peers in West Africa, I think it leaves us with a very strong project, solid economics, significant leverage to the gold price, something that stands out amongst its peers. And I think, again, this is probably relatively early in the life of this project, and I think with further exploration and the potential to add further ounces, this could still get an awful lot better. So still a lot of exploration to do. As I said earlier, we've been very much concentrated on Koné, concentrating the drilling in developing and delivering those resource, both the resource addition to the end of last year and the conversion of that inferred resource to an indicated resource by the end of July this year. But there are a number of other targets. Koné sits on a major regional structure. You can follow this structure all the way north up into Siama in Ghana, in Mali. And a lot of those structures are well studied. We've got regional geophysics, and not just within the permit where Koné sits, but also in some applications we have to the north. We have a huge amount of exploration to complete in areas that really haven't been explored in the past. And I think this is perhaps one of the key things about Côte d'Ivoire. It is still a place you can go and find permits that have never been explored. So as we move forward into the feasibility stage, we're pushing hard to get those applications granted with the government in Abidjan. And we're looking forward to accelerating our exploration. Now our geologists have finished with the drill out almost. And we can get after and we can start looking for satellite deposits. Obviously, you don't need to find 1 million ounces. 100, 200, 300,000 ounces of a couple of grams is eminently truckable as far out as about 75 kilometers. And the impact economically of putting those ounces through a large, low-cost plant such as Koné is out of proportion to their size. So a lot of exploration to do, and a lot of ways we can not just optimize what we have at the moment, but add to it as we go forward into the future. A little bit of a timeline here, but I think obviously the key here is to the right. We obviously have now delivered the PEA. We'll come out with our indicated resource in late July. And we are working on the environmental side and hope to submit the environmental impact statement to the government and the regulators by probably October of this year. Completion of the feasibility study by year end is on track. And obviously after that, the application for a mining permit, the negotiation of the mining convention. So we'd like to think that given all of this, we would be in a position to start looking at construction decisions or financing towards construction decisions in first half of next year once those aspects have been completed. I'll just touch on this to finish off with, really. As I said, we've been working, myself and some of the geologists have been working on this project off and on since about 2009. We know the communities very well. We live and work within those communities, and they've been tremendously supportive. And obviously, we've paid back. We've invested a lot in our community projects. We are one of the biggest employers in these villages, and we do, on the back of that, get a huge amount of support. So as we move forward through the environmental phase, we hope to continue that support and keep that investment in the communities going. So in summary, Koné deposit is continuing to grow. I think it still has room to get even bigger. I think as we go forward, we can expand those pits. I think we've delivered a very positive PEA. There aren't a lot of projects around these days which will produce in excess of 200,000 ounces over a 15-year mine life. And we are fully funded to complete a feasibility study on the project by the end of the year. As I said, we would be looking to come out of 2021 with around $9 or $10 million in the bank. That's what the current budget is showing us, unless we find something else. Obviously, a lot of drilling going on at the moment, a lot of exploration still to do on this. And I think for me, that's the exciting part. Now we've locked away, or now we've shown what Koné is, we can really get after some of the other stuff and start exploring, doing grassroots exploration again and see how we can make it even better. Thanks for your time. If you have any questions, there are some contact details at the end of the presentation. Thank you.